Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Happy Friday. If it's still Friday for you, by the way, because you can be connected from another part of the world. For you, it's already Saturday morning. So thank you so much, everybody, for being part of this Hacking HR community and following us in this Hacking HR live chat series that we started at the beginning of the year, inviting authors, researchers, experts to have these conversations with us about the research and the insights that they are sharing with all of us in the community, with the books that they are putting out there for all of us. It's been an exciting journey. This is going to be, I think, our last live chat series of the or live chat conversation of the year. As part of this live chat series, you can go to our website and find them all posted in there. A lot of great conversations, lots of great topics in there. And I am hoping that you continue to join us next year in all the many, many conversations that we have planned for you, the many events and activities and everything that we are going to be putting together, continue to put together actually for the community. So thank you, everybody. For those of you who are connected live right now in any of our social media channels, please let us know where you are connecting from in the world. Just post it in the chat. Let us know whatever that is. I would love to see where everybody is. And if you have any questions or any comments, any feedback, any reaction, anything that you want to share, as long as it is related to the topic of this conversation, please feel free to use that chat option generously. That's what it is. That's what it is there for. So I am hoping that you share anything that you have in mind with us in the chat. I'm excited about the last conversation of the year, Wired to Become the Brain Science of Finding Your Purpose, Creating Meaningful Work, and Achieving Your Potential. I'm very excited to welcome. Let me just. I have two computers. When I do this, I have two mouses. I don't know if you say mice or mouses when it's computers. Two mice on my desk, two keyboards. So I always get confused about which one I have to use. But I got it right now. I'm gonna bring Britt to the stage with me to have this wonderful conversation. Good morning, Britt. How are you?
Good morning, Enrique. I'm great. How about you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Excited about the conversation, Wired to Become the Brain Science of Finding Your Purpose, Creating Meaningful Work, and Achieving Your Potential. So, we're going to be digging really deep into these concepts, but let's begin from the beginning. I would love for you to introduce yourself to our audience. Let us know more about you, the work you've done, and anything else that you want to share with our Hacking HR community.
Well, thank you. I have been part of the HR community for a big portion of my career. I'm the former chief learning officer for lynda.com, which is now LinkedIn Learning. And in that role, I was responsible for helping develop all of our staff members. And then because we were a video-based training company, a lot of my work and research was put into the library. And it was during that time that I started studying the neuroscience of things. I first started studying how the brain learns so I could be better at my craft. And that became my first book, Wired to Grow. And then we were acquired by LinkedIn, and I realized that everything we knew about change management was not helping. So I thought, I wonder what brain science says about change. And that became the second book. And then I realized, I guess I'm doing this. I'm going to be the person who kind of translates this research to everyday business problems that we can use on the ground in the organizations we work for. So the third book is Wired to Connect, all about teams and inclusion and belonging. And then the newest book, Wired to Become, just came out this year, and it's all about purpose and meaningful work. And I really love what I do. I also get to do a lot of speaking engagements. I am the CEO of Brain Aware Training. So we offer training options to companies. They can become certified in our models, or we can come in and do a rollout. And I love the work that we do, getting to help our organizations be their best.
Well, that is fantastic. I appreciate you for coming to this show and sharing more about the book Wired to Become with all of us, and now for introducing yourself, of course. And I think it's evident that there is a connecting thread among all your books, which is the word wired. And I am guessing that that means that you are trying to make sure that people understand that what you're talking about, it's science-based, and our brains are wired for connection, for growth, to become, right, to find meaning, to find purpose. So can you explain more about the meaning of having the word wired in 3 out of your 4 books?
It's actually all 4. They're all wired too. It really is. You're right. I wanted to show people that when you study neuroscience, it's really fascinating to look at the biology of us as a species, right? And there's certain things that our brain and our biology is just wired to do and not do. And it turns out that when we work with our biology, we can accomplish so much more. But a lot of how we, run organizations or treat people in the work environment is actually counter to biology. And that's why we get problems in the workplace. So I really wanted to bring this information forward. And I didn't plan on writing a series, but it just kind of kept flowing, one book after the other. And it made sense to kind of keep them connected because it all comes from a neuroscience or brain-based angle.
Yeah, absolutely. So now let me ask you this. What is purpose? And I don't know if you're going to give me a different definition for the second part of this question, but I'll ask it either way, which is, what is the meaning of purpose at work? So what is purpose? What is purpose at work?
Yeah, so let's start with purpose versus happiness, because the research kind of distinguishes these two things. And this distinction goes back for hundreds of years. But really, happiness and pleasure is known as hedonic well-being. And it's kind of that focus on some immediate sense of pleasure or joy, kind of the idea of having a good time. It's really self-focused. It's what makes me feel happy. It's what brings me joy. But it's really short-term, right? It's like the immediate. Where purpose or meaning is known as eudaimonic well-being. It's the second type of well-being we need to be healthy. And that really results from striving toward meaning, purpose, our potential. It's a longer-term focus, right? And it's what gives us that deeper sense of fulfillment and satisfaction. So people who rate high on happiness but low on purpose oftentimes don't really feel good about their lives. And vice versa, if you're high on purpose but not high on happiness, you're also out of balance. So the goal is to find a balance of both. If the phrase for happiness is having a good time, then purpose and meaning, the phrase is living a good life. And by definition, purpose is always focused on others. So it's self-transcending. It's about being of service or support to other people in some way. So that's kind of the definition. And then when we look at purpose at work or meaningful work, what's really interesting is we can think about them as a continuum, like something that's meaningful on one end to meaningless on the other end. And for those of us who have jobs, there's kind of 3 areas we can think about feeling purposeful or meaningful work, right? The first is the meaning of work. And this is this overall concept of how you perceive work in general. It's very influenced by how your parents saw work, what you learned from teachers, etc. And then there's meaning in work, which is what work you find meaningful to you personally. And that tends to give you a career lane that you stay in, like healthcare or technology. And then there's meaning at work, which is, this is really narrowly defined to the context of this specific job at this organization. And so when people are feeling like, something doesn't feel right, I like to give them kind of those 3 tiers to look at, because maybe you're destined to be a healthcare worker, but you're at the wrong organization. In the case of the pandemic, though, so many of our healthcare workers had to work in such, intense circumstances that they burned out and no longer want to be in that particular field. And so they're switching to a different field. So there's a lot of, oh my gosh, I could talk for hours about this. I think I answered your first question.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I am thinking about whether, sometimes we hear the expression, people hate working, right? And I always correct that, saying, no, people hate your job. Your job is ill-designed. Your organization maybe sucks, and you're blaming it on people instead of blaming it on your own design. I have always thought that people find meaning and an outlet for their creativity, for creativity, for talents, for the use of skills, for the love of a craft with work. But if your job sucks and the job design sucks, of course, people are going to hate coming to work. But that doesn't mean that they hate the act of working. They hate just the job. So my question to you is,
I agree. And all the research supports what you're saying.
Do you want to develop more on this before I ask my question? Do you want to say more about it?
The only thing that I would add is that the research is pretty clear that, purpose at work kind of falls into three categories, and we need all of them. One is the impact you want to have. And some people want to impact at like the individual level. Some folks want to have impact organizationally. Some people are trying to impact societally. So you kind of have to think about what level is the one that resonates most for you. The second is learning and mastery. We are wired to want to learn and grow and become better. Take that out of whatever educational experiences you have. Oftentimes what happened to us in school or training, forced learning, makes us think that we don't like to learn. But as a species, we love to learn. We're innately curious. We are always seeking to improve. And so the opportunities to learn and grow is the second big category. And the third is relationships, right? Having colleagues that you trust and that you feel psychologically safe with, and that you feel that you're respected and you respect them. So those are the three categories that seem to be the most impactful or meaningful. And if any one of those is lacking because the organization isn't providing it, or there's been damage done to a relationship, it's not going to feel as good. But I always like to give people those three buckets, because that's a way you can start to go, oh, what's off here, and what do I need to shift a little bit?
Well, I'm glad I held on my question before, because this provides even greater context to the actual question, which is, are our modern organizations ready, prepared to respond to that? And I specifically ask this question thinking about the newer generations, the younger generations, say Gen Z or Alpha generation, young people that are now thinking, I don't want to be just a cog in a machine that is making a lot of money for people that I don't even know and I will never know. I want to make sure that whatever we're doing is creating a positive impact in the world, whether it is in the environment, in other people, in our society in general, and whatnot. So are our organizations ready for something like this, to provide that avenue for purpose in the sense that you're describing? And if not, what can we do to redesign them for that?
Yeah. So they're going to exist on a continuum. Some are very ready and are leading the charge at becoming purpose-driven organizations and really providing a rich, vital, respectful environment in which employees can thrive. And they take, stakeholder well-being, and stakeholders including their employees, the environment, the community in which they work, all of that into account. There's many organizations that are really taking that seriously and doing a great job. Then there's some who are like realizing it's important. They've got some things that are working, some things that they need to fix. But they get it. They see, the reality is we are forever by the pandemic. The pandemic changed society significantly, and it changed every member of society, because we were faced with our mortality, and that forces you to reevaluate your values and priorities. And so the workforce is never going back to the way it was, ever. And then there's at the other end of the continuum of the organizations who are in denial about this, right? They're not seeing the evidence. They're not seeing that the younger generation is very focused on purpose, and particularly the environment and equality or equity. And when they miss that mark, they're going to pay the price in losing consumers. People are making consumer choices based on these things. They're not going to be able to attract or retain talent. They're going to have much higher levels of labor actions and labor disputes. All of these things are playing out, and we're seeing organizations, either be on the leading edge of it, trying to improve, or if they're in denial, they're going to die. They're not going to be able to keep their business open. So we are going through a really massive shift that I think is very exciting and very positive, but it's going to be a bit of a hot mess for a little while as we work these things out.
Yeah. How do you, I know that you talk to a lot of business leaders.
I do.
And many of them may be already won over the idea of redesigning their organizations and work and careers to make sure that they are providing the avenues for people to find purpose and meaning in the work they do. But I'm sure you have found many of them saying, Britt, this is BS. I mean, come on, people come here, they do their job, we pay them for that job. I am thinking about actually a quote by the series Mad Men, when this young intern comes to the boss and says, like, you never say thank you. And the guy says to her, I pay you for that, to not say thank you. Like if that was a replacement for the gratitude, right, that this young person was expecting. So how do you approach a conversation when you have a business leader telling you, I don't believe that that's what work is supposed to be for, that our workplaces were not meant to do that. A business is a business and it's supposed to make money. How do you approach those obstacles that they are probably putting on your way when you have those conversations?
You know, I don't find as many of them as I used to, but when I do,
Wow.
I just turn it into a business discussion
Mm.
around what are the metrics that matter. And the data is super clear. Like, here are how consumers are choosing companies. Consumers leave companies when they don't sense purpose driven or equality or respect. I have them, we literally look at their own internal data for engagement scores, exit strategy, exit interviews, retention. And I start to help them calculate the actual dollars that it takes to fix those things or replace those people. So even if I have someone, and remember, every generation is responding to what they were taught or what they were
Yeah.
raised in. And we're getting more and more conscious and connected with every generation. But that means that there's, on some level, a disconnect between how we see the world. However, when you get back to dollars and cents, it's very, very clear the things that make a successful business. And so I try to coach them around, I get that this is your personal belief, but let's look at what's going to help the success of this business and what
Yeah.
really matters, when we look at the breakdown of the financial implications of these things. But I also encourage them, like, hey, if this is not the song you sing, don't fake it either. Like,
Yeah.
hire people who believe in this and then
Yeah.
empower them to create the culture of your organization. Don't get in the way, because our younger generation is really good at detecting BS and
Yeah.
they will
Yeah.
call it out. So I'm also giving leaders permission, like, if this doesn't resonate for you, that's okay. Then hire the right people. But this is what you need to do to have your business be successful.
Yeah. And I've seen some organizations out there clearly saying, this is our culture. Here we work this many hours, which is probably more than most other organizations. We don't talk about these things. We talk about this other stuff. We're focused on, I don't know, making money or whatever it is that they're doing. And indeed, that may not resonate with a lot of people, but it may resonate with some others that they are looking for something like that. And I like that you're bringing up this idea of, don't fake it. I mean, if you believe in it, even if you don't know how, get on the journey, right? But if that's not your jam, then be where you are, but just do it well.
Yeah. The other thing that I would add, and I think this is a challenge for just HR in general, is that when you think about the evolution of an organization and when HR comes in, generally HR is often tasked with risk management, and the legal side of the house gets very involved early on in terms of, you know, building policies to the lowest common denominator instead of elevating the rest of the population. And so the challenge for HR is we constantly have to not be taken over by the risk mitigation view, because that's going to
Yeah.
have you look at people at their worst and be planning for the worst, when really that's a small percentage of your workforce.
Yeah.
Where folks from like the L&D, learning and development space, or talent management space tend to see the whole picture of potential and enlivening and engaging the other 98% of the workforce, and focusing there and looking at all the great things that are happening. And so I think we have to be careful that it's just true that if you put wherever you put your attention most of the time, it's going to color how you see things.
Yeah.
And so I think as a field, we need to make sure that HR folks are getting a chance to not always just be hanging out in risk mitigation and dealing with poor behavior. They need to be able to see all the wonderful things that are happening and tap into all the power that happens when we really enliven our workforce.
Thank you for that. And I want to ask you this. You come to an organization, a CEO brings you in, he or she tells you, I'm going to have people not tell you anything about here. You come and I want you to find out the indicators about whether we are an organization where people find meaning and purpose and work or not. What are those indicators? What are the clear evidence and the clear indicators that may be either observable, you may not even need to do research or surveys. You just see them, that people are finding meaning and or purpose in the work that they are doing in that workplace.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious indicators that I look at is, retention, attrition.
Yeah.
Are you attracting talent? How long is your new talent staying before they leave? I really like to look at exit surveys and engagement data. I mean, almost always the problems are called out in the data. The issue is that there's a barrier to handling the problem. And so many organizations will leave a toxic manager in place because, I don't know, they either are uncomfortable dealing with it, or they just feel like this person has a big reputation and they don't want to piss them off. But oftentimes the real issue is not handling the problems that are clearly evident.
Yeah.
And so we look at like what's in the way of that. But usually the organization is sending signs. Your absenteeism rate, how many people are taking sick days or mental health days, is a big indicator as well. Productivity is an indicator. Psychological safety is an indicator. And that you can measure by how often people talk about their mistakes, not just their successes. Because if you feel safe enough to talk about mistakes and you know that you can share that without risk of being shamed or blamed, that actually helps the organization grow and improve. So I look at all these different things that are both going to be in the data. I'll oftentimes hold some focus groups. People know. And sometimes HR is in that uncomfortable situation of having to be the one to try to get the rest of the executives to listen, and then the executives can kind of brush them off and not listen. So I'm oftentimes teaching HR too, like, how can we pull these data points together and you make a compelling story? And also the reality of, if you're in HR and your executive team is not respecting or listening to you, that's also a sign that maybe you're not in the right organization, right? Like, I know that it's really painful when we really believe in helping people be their best, and then we can't get the resources or the support to do our jobs. And I think that that's also a sign too. I've seen a meme like, if HR is leaving, you need to get out of the company because
they can't get it done. They can change it.
Yeah. And I know so many wonderful, wonderful HR folks who care so deeply and then are thwarted because they're not given the resources. And that hurts them too. That's a burden that we take home every night. And so I also kind of look at what's happening with the HR team.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let me ask you this, kind of like a very, very real question for a lot of people, right? I mean, you have employee who may have done the work and the inner work of finding out, my passion in the world is bringing happiness through music. I'm just making it up, right? I am a musician at heart. And I actually met somebody recently, by the way. This is funny, but actually not funny, but it's a real story. Somebody who said to me, my passion is, that person was a musician, playing for older people that are in hospices or care houses and facilities and whatnot. And I was like, wow, that's quite a purpose to have, right? I mean, I've never heard anybody saying something to me like that. But that person happens to be in a job where there is absolutely no connection with what that person actually wants to do in life, because she needs to pay the bills. Right. And so I want to ask you, if the boss of that young person that told me this story finds out about this, I don't even know if the boss knows about that, but say that the boss finds out, like, oh, Britt, I didn't know that you wanted to be a musician for, older generations and older people in their, hospice houses or care houses and whatnot. How can they create something at work that gives a little bit of an outlet for that person to, bring in some of that passion, even if it doesn't have something directly to do with the work that they are doing?
Absolutely. And I love that you asked this question. One of my favorite books is called The Dream Manager. Mm-hmm. And I recommend everyone read it because it's really this idea that every manager should know their employees' hopes and dreams, even if those dreams have nothing to do with the work they do at the organization. And because it gives you so much useful information. If someone came to me with this information, here's the things I would see. Wow, this person loves music. This person really cares about other people and wants to be of service in creating some comfort or some uplifting experiences for other people. So how I would support this person is, first of all, say, great, can we do anything to support that off work interest that you have?
Mm.
Are there ways that we can use your improvement dollars so that you could take a class in musicianship? Do you want that to count as your volunteer hours that we want everyone to do at this company? Do you want some of your donations, matching donations, to go to that? So that's an easy thing we can do. But I would also be like, how can I bring music into this person's job? So
Mm.
I would be seeing if there's opportunities for them to kind of intern over in the marketing department and maybe have a role in picking out music for ads or picking out music that we play at our corporate events. I would, whenever we have some kind of office gathering, I'd put them in charge of the playlist. I would also see if they want to bring their music into the work in some way. The other thing about a musical mind is it's very close to an engineering or mathematical mind. And so I'd also be,
I'm an engineer, so
yeah,
and
I'd also
my
be
dad is a
like,
musician.
yeah, so I'd be like, hey, there's a connection here. Do you have
Yeah,
any interest in learning coding
yeah,
or being part
yeah,
of engineering or looking at something like that? So this is me just literally reacting live to this question. But
yeah,
there's so many places you could go with that if you're genuinely curious about someone and you genuinely care about maximizing their potential. Because I
yeah,
promise you, you're not accelerating this person leaving the company. If you treat them this way, you're going to make them more loyal and harder working because they feel
yeah,
really seen and heard
yeah.
by their supervisor.
Yeah. What I really appreciate, actually, more than how to even respond to that specific situation, is the fact that you're saying, be curious about that person, be open-minded, ask them questions. You don't have to have the answer if you're their leader. You just ask the questions because maybe they know, like, hey, Enrique, like, you're my boss, but in marketing, they're looking for somebody who knows about a little bit about music because they want to do some, I don't know, jingles or something for whatever, the next ad that is going on television, and I want to volunteer for that. Can you give me a couple of hours per week, for the next 4 weeks to do something like this, right? Just opening up the possibility for those conversations really allow people to have the safety to express themselves and say, there are areas in my life that I am very passionate about, and I am not utilizing any of those skills in my current job. How can I connect the dots in here?
Absolutely. And also giving that permission. I know a couple people who their hobbies are like their safe time, their relaxation time. They don't want to bring that into the office.
Yeah,
So it's also okay to be like, no, I want to have a hard boundary here. But great. Then how can we support you and make sure that you can go do that and fully enjoy it, right? And
yeah.
making sure that I'm not assigning a big project to that person the night before they have to go do one of these
Like a
gigs,
concert or
right?
something.
So like,
Yeah,
you can also just support people in having their enjoyment in their
yeah,
lives that are off hours. We should keep
yeah.
those boundaries clear.
All of which will happen when the conditions are in place, which you mentioned, when you genuinely care for people, and when you're curious, when you're asking the right questions, and you are that dreamed manager that cares for people's dreams and purpose and meaning. Britt, as we unfortunately are getting to the end of our conversation, I want to be mindful of your time. Your teammate must be waiting for you right now to have a conversation with you, but thank you for giving me a little bit more time than we had originally planned. I want to ask you this question to hopefully inspire even more our audience to redesign their organizations to provide those outlets for purpose and meaning. What happens when you actually do this at work? What happens when all the leaders are having those kinds of conversations and they are talking to their people and they are saying, well, your job is not music, but yes, you can have 1 hour a week to talk to work with the marketing team because they need a musician. What happens when you create those avenues for people to actually have an outlet for purpose and meaning in their jobs? What happens with people and the organization?
Yeah. So the research is really, really clear. And one of the things that I do in the book is I have a lot of the data points. So I have a whole section on how do you make your organization more purpose driven and what are the payoffs and the costs. But the research is really clear that you're going to see increases in all kinds of good things. Productivity goes up, performance goes up, customer satisfaction goes up, engagement goes up, retention goes up. All of those translate to real savings for the organization. And bad stuff goes down, right? So you've got less absenteeism, you've got less health issues because people are feeling healthier at work. They can manage their well-being at work. And that has implications for like anxiety and depression and healthcare costs and all kinds of stuff. We also know that even the financial performance of these organizations, even on the stock market, seriously
Yeah.
outperform. Purpose-driven organizations significantly and seriously outperform their competitors. So if you want to dig more into the data, there's very rich and solid data on that. And one of the researchers I would point you to is Regenda Sosidio. He wrote the book Conscious Capitalism.
Mhm.
He's got a new book out called The Healing Organization, and he's really tracking organizations at the front edge of this work. And he's got a lot of the economic data analysis of it. And I reference a lot of his findings in my book, but he's another great person to follow and check out what he's doing. But the evidence is really, really clear and cut and dried pretty much.
Yeah, it's so powerful that when you do it, not only for the right reasons, but even if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, you still get financial upside and an impact on the bottom line of your business. And so hopefully leaders are doing it because they really care about what this means for people's health, holistic health, but also because they know that it will positively impact their businesses and their organizations. So this was fantastic, Britt. Thank you so much for joining me and for giving me a little bit more time. For everybody who's tuning in, go and get your copy of Wired to Become: The Brain Science of Finding Your Purpose, Creating Meaningful Work, and Achieving Your Potential. This was just a little bit of all the awesome insights that you're going to find in Britt's book. So, Britt, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the week and weekend ahead and holiday season. And same thing for everybody. I hope you all join us next year in our live chat series. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Britt.
Thank you. Have a great holiday season.
Thank you.